Mindset Mechanics 101, Module 3, Performance. Hey there, it's Carlita Wright, and I am your host for this series on Mindset Mechanics, the book, the foundational teachings of how it works and how your business actually operates. And today we're going to talk about performance. And before we get started, I really want to discuss the outline for performance and success. And there's only one thing that really drives your performance. We're going to discuss the bell curves and we're going to go over the laws of thermodynamics and some examples of systems and performance and how to troubleshoot your success and performance. So here's a picture of the Mindset Mechanics interface, and it's going to give you a clue of where we are in the system. And here is showing you operational systems. And this is where we're going to start to build your performance. So, this is one of my favorite questions because it's filled with contradictions. And like a lot of things in mindset mechanics, it helps you think about things more dynamically. But first, I want to point out some of the obvious contradictions that you hear when you're trying to find the answers to how to improve performance and get more happiness. So let's just say you had a chance to interview 100 of the world's most successful people, the highest performers, and you say, hey, what's the secret behind your success and performance? And you'll hear things like, well, you got to fight really hard and be determined and be very focused on what you're doing. You got to really develop who you are and your skills, and you got to be educated. And you might also hear them say things like, well, you can only do what you can do, right? If you don't have it, you don't have it. If you do, maybe you'll get lucky, right? You might even hear people say things like, you know, you got to find the right opportunity, and that's how you become successful. Now, if you were to ask 100 of the most successful, the highest performers who are also happy, what their secret to happiness and performance was, they would say a different thing, a whole nother set of responses. You might hear things like, well, you got to forget about yourself, you got to lose yourself, and be in 100% commitment to others. You might even say, well, you have to depend on a higher and greater power beyond yourself. You might hear them say, well, you got to do what you love and you got to follow what you love and be in flow, right? Well, there are definitely different sets of answers and reasons that lead people to perform high and to have happiness and versus actually having happiness and performance. So now we're going to dive into some of this into understand exactly what's taking place. So first off, it seems like there's definitely a contradiction between those who are successful and perform high at a high level and those who are happy as well. So once you get down to the causation level, like what's causing, what's the why, what's the bottom line, you begin to see that there's really only one thing that drives success and performance and happiness. And in mindset mechanics, it's found in the business vehicle control system. In this video, I'm going to share with you that common thing that is the business control system. And in here, we'll begin to find the reasons for happiness. So before we get started, I want to lay down some foundational steps, and then we're going to go over more in more detail. So this is a picture of a standard distribution curve or a bell curve. And what it's saying here is that if you can take any group that has a quantity or a population that is a set number, then you're able to measure and really reduce it and quantify what's taking place. But in the bigger scheme, it's going to follow certain patterns. And the pattern is that in the middle, 3, columns or sections, about 96%. And on the ends, you'll have about 2% on either end. 2 to 3%, give or take, right? And this bell curve, when it comes to achievers, let's say we take 100 students and they're all talented, they're all very smart, and we put them in this bell curve and this distribution curve. And what we'll end up with is the best of the best will be on the top end of outstanding. And even those who are unacceptable, they're still top, but they will fall in different ranges of this bell curve. Now, most of us live our lives and we think, well, all I got to do is be in the top 2%, and I will have everything I want in my life. I'll have finances, I'll have success, I'll have the business, I'll have the team, right? You'll be among the high achievers of your industry or of your career success organization, whatever that is. But there's something very interesting. There's a study that happened and it says the opposite. It doesn't really happen. They took it and they asked those top 2%, and only 10% of the 2% were actually happy. So data stated that whether you were a politician, an entrepreneur, an artist, or an entertainer, your level of authentic happiness, your level of satisfaction was varied. And like 10% of the 2% were not only high achievers but also happy. So that's 0.2% of the population set, or what Dr. Mary E. Anderson calls the happy high achievers. So imagine that you take 1,000 of the richest, most famous people and you put them in a room, and only 2 or 3 people out of the entire group are going to be not only successful and high performers, but they're going to also experience vitality, satisfaction, and happiness in their life. That's amazing. 1,000 people, only 2, maybe 3 if you're lucky, right? So what I want to do in this video is to explain the root cause of happiness and success and performance. And they're not a contradiction. They actually flow from the same foundational formula that we must understand. And I'm going to give you different lenses within the video to see and recognize performance and success and happiness in your own life so that you can better apply and manage these concepts and see them working day to day from your family, from your business, from your team, from your government. My goal is to help you apply these scientific principles to your life. So starting off, this is a system, and it's how we're going to approach any problem and build perspective of anything that we're talking about. Now, defining a system, I have to say this, that our universe is a system, and everything in our universe is a system. So, in essence, our universe is a system of systems. And when we look at this picture here, this box, what it means is that we're not going to try to reduce things down to the smaller parts. Instead, we're going to look at we're going to zone in on what we're looking at in totality and how it interacts with the greater environment. So it's a metaphor. Dotted lines don't really exist, but we are taking your business under observation, and we're going to look at how it interacts with this greater society, the greater world. And I said it's dotted because we are isolating it to observe it. But in actuality, just remember, no system actually works in isolation. Everything interacts with each other, and everything works with the environment. Okay. So now let's go over the laws of thermo, and this is going to be um, Very important to understand how energy and things exist and how they enter and exit systems, and a constant ebb and flow. So, conservation is basically about how things are entering and exiting, and disorder is about how things fall apart. So, from a systems perspective, we know that there are two laws: conservation and disorder. And these two laws are going to determine everything that exists in our systems. So, I mentioned conservation. This is the big energy law. Okay. It's sometimes called the big energy law. And it means that at a certain time, a system has a finite amount of energy. And the amount of energy you put in a system has to conserved. And what it's saying is that energy that we put into a system, it cannot be created. We cannot create it nor destroy it, but we can shift it from one place to another. It can come in and out. It can go from solid, liquid, gas, plasma, right? But we cannot create it. We cannot destroy it. We can only shift it from one place to another. And in our environment, it has the energy we need for our systems. We cannot create it, we can't destroy it. We can take from the environment, bring it to our system, and we can take it from our system, put it back to the environment, right? It can change state. So I'm just kind of repeating it so you understand that the the law of thermo is about conservation. The amount of energy that exists in the universe is what exists in the universe, right? We cannot change that. It's finite. So we have to always be looking for ways to renew, to get new energy, to new sources of energy, and continue to get more sales, get new customers, get new resources, find team members, and we get that from our environment so that we continue to do what we have to do. Now, this is why you need to go get food from your refrigerator, right? If you notice that you are not just a physical system, but you as a person, you're a human being, but you're also mentally a system, you're emotionally a system, you're spiritually a system, and energy is coming in and out of each one of these entities: your mind, your body, your emotion, your spirit. So we have to adapt to the environment, right? The way you mentally adapt to the environment, you mentally adapt, your emotion adapt to your environment, your spiritual adapt to your environment, right? And that's what's going to connect you to others within the environment, your friends, your family, the information you're gathering, because you have a finite amount of energy. You have to go to sources that are going to revitalize you and bring you back into alignment with your environment or where you want to be. So you have to find new source of energy. You have to conserve the energy you have, and you have to continue to transform or recognize when you're being transformed from one state to another as a person, but also as a business. If you were put in solitary confinement and your mental and emotional systems would break down, right? If you were isolated from other people, you would break down, you would not function. You just sat still for the next 40 years and didn't move. Your body, your tissue, your organs would just break down. If a house had no electricity, had no running water, had no one living in it, just because it just sits there in isolation, it eventually breaks down, right? So everything needs new energy in order to keep it going. If it loses energy, it ceases to exist. Remember, we're dealing with finite energy, right? We cannot create it, we cannot destroy it. We can only get it from the environment, and we have to continue to renew that energy and transform it from one place and one form to another. The next law is disorder. It's called the law of order. And what that second law is saying is the reason why you're experiencing chaos. It's the reason why things are falling apart. It's the reason why things are deteriorating. It's the reason why over time things don't work the way they used to, right? So the law of order or disorder or entropy just means there's chaos, and chaos is going to always be present. It's nothing we can really do to eliminate chaos. It just happens. It's a part of time. Time goes with this arrow. It's always going forward in one direction. That's the order of time. It always goes forward, right? And things are always falling apart. So with this concept, with this order, or the law of order, it states that energy that enters into a system is going to always take care of the internal needs of the system first before it begins to perform or outperform or do other extracurricular activities. It's going to first deal with its internal needs first. So if you're a person, you gotta fill up your cup first before you can begin to help others, right? So when we have this whole concept of giving, 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 it doesn't align with the laws of physics and thermodynamics, which states you have to take care of your internal needs first before you can do anything else. Same with your business. You have business before you have to first take care of the bills, the payroll, the expenses before you can go out and acquire new land, new territory, new markets, right? So, in that process of order, disorder is always present. It's always a chance for things to fall apart and things to not work the way we expected. It's always a chance to lose the energy that you're using to supply internal needs. It's like a creeping effect, right? So this creeping effect is the loss of internal energy, which is called disorder or entropy, right? Which works against the law of order, but it's always present. So that's a fascinating thing about thermo. Okay. Now, there's a cartoon I want to share. In this cartoon, as you can see, it's an entropy seminar. The result of a 5-year study to the second law of thermodynamics, and it's inevitable. I don't know what the rest of it says, right? So this is so funny because it really gives you idea, it gives a mental visual idea of what happens with entropy or disorder, which is that it's always getting worse. It's always increasing with time, and there's nothing we can do about it except to manage it. All we can do is manage its effects because it's going to happen. That's why we have to always clean, always pay bills, and always, we're always doing. We're always trying to manage. Management is a part of life, right? So we have to manage things. So no matter how orderly things start out, over time, things get out of order and chaos sets in. As time goes on, things lose their order. Effective life, that disorder is always working in every system. Our universe is comprised of systems, and they are systems of systems which all experience chaos. And it's our job to bring order to those systems. So here's the one thing that determines success. So we talked about the two laws of thermodynamics, and here this formula allows us to sum it all up. And it's called the mechanical performance formula. Now, I'm going to talk about performance first, and then we're going to go over some videos that kind of help you understand systems. And then we're going to go back to tie all of this back into what it means to be satisfied and happy. So, what this formula tells us is that there are two functions when it comes to success and performance. And you have a desired output, which you're trying to achieve, but there's a requirement. You have a required input. And it's always desired output over required input. And I'm going to define both these terms, and then I'm going to show you how to put this formula into action in your business and in your life. So, desired output is very important. It's more often that you get your desired output from your environment. So you bring in the resources, it takes care of certain needs, and then you get an output that goes to the environment. You're able to help others, and so your desired output interacts with the environment. And it's more resource focused. It's about efficiency and performance. Now, to get your desired output, there are several things. You have to be in the right environment, make the right decisions, deliver the right value, and you have to have an alignment with what you're capable of doing and the opportunities that exist, right? There has to be an alignment between capabilities and opportunities. And once you understand that all opportunities and capabilities are not created equal, you have to understand that you have to be selective in what you focus on or what you desire as your output. Okay. So this means that you're achieving your goals, you're aligning with opportunities, and you're differentiating capabilities and opportunities that sets your organization apart from the rest. It allows you to be more sustainable in your markets. It gives you success and gives you more value. So desired output, it has to be differentiable. It must be different. It must set you apart than the rest. Or else everything you produce becomes a commodity like everyone else. You don't want that. You want your output to be different, to be distinct, to be set apart, higher than the rest, and the clear choice. It's about capabilities, opportunities, but more importantly, differentiable capabilities and opportunities. It requires you to adapt to the environment. It's about adaptation, right? The more often you get your desires and your desired outcomes and you give to your environment, the more resource focused and efficient your system has to be in its performance. So if you're bringing in energy and resources, but your output doesn't match your desires, then you have to go back to the environment and get better resources. Because one thing that I can say is you can have a desire, but you really can't control the output. All you can control is the input. So your outputs are only as good as your inputs. That's why you have to make sure that you're going after the differentiable values of capabilities and opportunities that make those outputs distinguishable and highly desired. We're going to go over required inputs in a moment, but let's take a moment here. I want to go over this slide because when it comes to systems, there are different types of opportunities that you want to grow and different type of capabilities you want to be differentiable. So if you are in the right environment and making the right decisions and you're living the right value, then you have aligned capabilities and opportunities, and you're yielding high differentiation and high profit margins. And since I said earlier that not all opportunities are created equal, right? Which means that there are levels to it. As you can see, you have high and low profit margins and high and low value, right? And you have to understand which input you're getting is going to get you the correct output. And let's go ahead and look at it from a different lens. So now we're looking at your business systems from a thermodynamic view. And these systems align with desired outputs of a system, right? And systems behave different ways, whether it is open or closed, isolated or adiabatic. And we'll go over this really quickly in quick details in the book. But for now, I'm going to show you videos to help you understand the difference between how they behave.
In this experiment, we're going to investigate the conservation of mass in an open system.
Open systems.
Here, in an open flask, I have some baking soda. And right next to it, I have a graduated cylinder with about 50 milliliters of vinegar. Now, vinegar and baking soda react fairly violently. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and do that right now and see what happens. I'm going to add this in small amounts because we don't want anything to overflow. Small amounts of vinegar, and you can see that there is quite vigorous bubbling. So we almost have all of our vinegar added now. And once we're done that, we're going to place this container back on the scale, and we're going to give our container a little bit of a swirl to make sure everything has reacted. And we can see that our final mass is now 255 grams. So the question is, where did the 1 gram of mass go? Well, if you watch this reaction, the violent bubbling is that of carbon dioxide. Now, since this is an open flask, the carbon dioxide is free to escape. Because of that, the carbon dioxide has mass, and with it gone, we now have a total mass that is less than what we started with.
Systems.
This first experiment is for temperature and air pressure. The lab setup. We have two 2-liter bottles. One 2-liter bottle has just water in it at room temperature. This will have warm water in it when we're done. So 2 2-liter bottles. We have to use water to increase the temperature in the 2-liter bottle, so that's why this one is the control with the room temperature water. So what will happen is, for each bottle, we'll swirl the water around, and then the bottle will be capped. So that's our control. Room temperature water, swirled, and then capped. This bottle now will have boiling water as its temperature vector. Again, I'm going to swirl the water around and now cap the bottle. Now that the bottle has been capped, you can see that the sides are kind of concaved inward. And they're continuing to do so. This side's quite pointy now. So, when temperature increases, air pressure decreased. The outside cooler air pushed in on the sides of the 2-liter bottle to make it concave. Air temperature increases, the air pressure decreases.
To isolate systems.
As you know, a thermos keeps the temperature of a liquid inside it the same. If we want to make a thermos, we need to prevent or minimize heat loss from the liquid. In other words, we need to minimize heat transfer from the liquid to the environment. Heat transfer occurs in 3 main ways: convection, conduction, and radiation. In convection, heat is transferred by movement of the fluid's molecules, whereas in conduction, heat flows through a body. If we make a gap between two bodies and remove the air particles that can transfer heat, we can minimize heat loss by convection and conduction. So in a thermos there are two bodies and there is a vacuum containing region between the bodies. Also, in order to minimize convection, we need a stopper. Besides these means, heat can be transferred by radiation. Thermal radiation can pass through a vacuum, so a gap with a vacuum between the bodies isn't enough. But if we silver the inner surface of the thermos, thermal radiation reflects back into the liquid and we eliminate heat loss by radiation. Now we know how a thermos works.
This is a demonstration of adiabatic heating. Adiabatic heating is the mechanism whereby diesel engines ignite their fuel. The piston fits inside of a hollow cylinder, and during the compression cycle of the piston, the volume decreases rapidly in the cylinder. When the volume decreases, the pressure increases and the temperature also increases rapidly. So the idea is, what adiabatic means is there's no heat lost or heat exchanged between the interior of the cylinder and the outside world. As long as this happens quickly, then that will hold true. There won't be any heat exchanged. So what I'm going to do is put a little piece of tissue paper in here, and then put the plunger at the top position, screw down this housing, and then attempt to plunge this fast enough to ignite the tissue paper. And I see a little burn mark in there, and there's a little bit of smoke, which you may be able to detect in there. Pull this out. And fish it out. Sure enough, it's a little bit of burn mark on the tissue paper, and it definitely smells burned. So we succeeded in at least burning a little bit of this tissue paper using adiabatic heating.
Now, let's shift down below the line to the required inputs. Now, this represents the amount of internal energy needed to maintain the system, right? And it's interesting because in this formula, input is also a measure of what is being lost, right? Which is called disorder or entropy or chaos. So we want to minimize our losses when we're putting in energy and input. We want to minimize the amount that we're losing. We're going to lose something, but we want to minimize it to make sure we are increasing as much as possible our efficiency and have as much energy as we need to get our desired output. So the undesired output, which is energy loss, is somewhere in the system or somewhere in the environment. It comes from the system, gets back to the environment, and we cannot change it. We cannot transform it. We cannot reuse it ever again to create useful work. Once it's gone, it's gone. That's lost opportunity, right? So this is work that we have to work on maintaining and keeping things internally aligned. That way it doesn't lose. We have to find ways to create value, find ways to restore the system and keep it going. We have to find ways to keep the system operating effectively. We got to make sure that we are differentiating ourselves. That way that value is being optimized as much as possible. Now, in order to keep disorder in check, we need to make sure we're making the right decisions, making the right internal management priorities. We're minimizing friction. We are extracting the right amount of value, the highest quality of value from the environment. That way it can be used for useful work. It can be used to get things done. It can have an intended purpose. So this formula is so powerful because it recognizes that energy is always finite. It's always in limited quantities. And it always goes to the bottom line first before it goes above the line. So as a leader, it's your job to recognize the potential of an energy source in the environment. It's your job to find and create new sources of energy and to align or create partnerships, resources, or extraction techniques of energy and making sure that it's being brought in and maintained. That way, your team can produce the outcomes that you're looking for. So, in summary, so far, we've talked about the required input is called disorder or entropy. We talked about desired output is adaptation to the environment. The available energy must first go below the line and meet the required input, which supplies internal needs to the system. And then we have to work. We have to work to maintain the system from disorder, right? From too much disorder. And we do that by making the right decisions and then getting the work done. And only after the internal needs are met can it go above the line to the desired output or adaptation to the environment. And then we must perform adaptation. We must make sure we know what's going on in the environment, be able to find and recognize new opportunities, and differentiate our capabilities of high value and align them with opportunities of high value. The higher the quality of energy you input to the system, the higher the opportunity of your desired output being maximized, right? Also, the more disorder you have, the lower the performance, the lower the output you're going to have. So it works in two different ways. One, I'll repeat that one more time. The higher the quality of energy, the better quality, the better employees you can find, the better interest rate you can find, the better material you can find. All right. The higher the quality of the input, the higher desired output, right? The more energy is available to get to that desired output. Now, the more losses you have in the system, the more chaos, the more friction, the more disorder and you have, the more entropy you have, the lower your opportunity and probability for success and performance. So now let's go over some systems to kind of help you understand how they interact with each other. So the family is a system. So let's consider someone is having a family crisis. And a family crisis is a physics problem. The family has a finite amount of energy. Let's say they are experiencing financial struggles. That's disorder. They have a high level of disorder or chaos or entropy in their family system. They have to use what they have available to sustain the day to day living of the family. Now, once they are financially stable, disorder goes down, entropy goes down, and now they have more energy to go out into the world and to adapt. So if the family wants to go on vacation, their bank account might say, hey, you may want to postpone those plans because we have to keep our spending to a limit, right? But we recognize that the family has a finite source of energy, right? And they have to minimize their spending, their expenses, and increase their income in order to lower their entropy, to lower their disorder, to lower the chaos. Once the family is out of the financial crisis, they can go out into the world now, go on vacations, and begin to adapt to their environment again. Marriage. Marriage is a system. If a couple is going through a fight or a divorce, that's big disorder and chaos that's costing the system. They have a limited amount of energy. So if the wife goes to work and she works in sales and she puts on a show, she's doing her job, but she really can't get the best that she can because she's adapted to her environment of chaos, and it's distracting her from being capable and maximizing opportunities with a new client she may be dealing with because of the fight that she had that morning with her husband, right? It's distracting her. The fallout is from her relationship is seeping into her mind, and she's not on top of her game. And but once her marriage heals, the disorder subsides, the entropy lowers. Now she has more energy to focus on adapting to the world around her and to actually be able to get results. Now, sports is a system. Sports provides us a great opportunity to see how this concept interacts and is in action. So, you might be the manager of a professional sports team, and naturally, you're looking for the best, most capable, highest performing players. Now, you have an opportunity, and you have unique capabilities. You need highly capable players. However, the kind of player you invite into your team matters. You want players that have low chaos, that have low disorder, they are functional, right? Capable and functional. You want them to be team oriented, to get along with other players, and to fit the culture you're building very well. Now, you want team members who make the system function well versus those who are elite, who are distracted and causes toxic culture. Now, if you are a good manager, then you need to balance capabilities with your players, right? And find those who fit because you need those of low entropy. And if you can do that, you have better performance of your team, a better experience from your team, and your probability of winning games increases. Business is also a system. In business, you see this all the time. You see on social networks, you see everywhere. Now, let's take, for example, TikTok. TikTok had a lot of drama, right? There's a lot of disorder and entropy in the system. And at one point, they were talking about canceling it, right? So it's an important point to make that the required inputs, which can create entropy or undesired outputs, are always present. One of your jobs as a leader is to make sure you're maximizing the input, right? You're maximizing the energy that you're bringing in. And in this case, we're seeing a lot of things when Facebook was growing, right? Facebook had a lot of issues with its developers. They had a lot of demand for Facebook ads, and entropy was high. Like people were complaining about Facebook during election and political seasons, and right. So the desire, the way it was adapting was not good. Right, it was causing more chaos than it was actually putting out. So you must increase your probability of success. And our last example here is government. The federal government is a system, right? It's a physics problems, and it has capabilities and opportunities. It has finite energy as well. And we see this in politics, whether it's infighting or backstabbing or talking about things negatively. And when these are present, it's hard for politicians to make decisions and to implement things quickly. So as long as there is an undesired output or chaos, disorder, entropy, whenever that's high, we can never expect our government to do great things because it's a physics problem. And you want your federal government to be successful. If you want them to be functional, then we have to lower the entropy. We have to lower the chaos, lower the disorder, lower the undesired output. And the system must bring in energy and focus and then adapt to the environment to transform these problems, to take advantage of capabilities, opportunities in order to serve the greater population. So now let's go over some examples of performance, and we're going to use the formula before and give you an example of how it actually works. And that formula is called the mechanical performance formula. So let's say you're giving 100 points of energy. And right now, 75 of those points are being used to handle disorder, right? To keep the system frictional and chaotic, right? The decisions are being wasted, the time is being wasted, resources being wasted, and at the end of the day, there's no good value, no true value to the customer being provided. It's very minimal. It's not what you're capable of doing because everything you have is being spent on just keeping the system from breaking down, right? So now you have only 25% system efficiency. And when you go out into the world and meet customers and make sales and develop new innovations, you're not as efficient as you could be. And if you were this business, I would say pay attention. Hey, wake up, pay attention. You're operating at 25% efficiency. You're wasting 75 points of your energy, right? So your goal is either to lower the required input, right? You need 100 points, you need to lower that required input, or you need to lower the undesired output, which is the entropy and disorder. You got to fix that, right? And try to get to 100% performance as possible, as close as possible. And in order to do this, you got to work on the internal system. There's something going on internally that's causing these losses, and we have to work on that. So if you could lower the disorder, if you could lower the undesired output by 50 points, which is 2/3, right? That would be more than a 200-point improvement, a 200% improvement to top line performance. And that's pretty awesome. Just by aligning some things, making the right decisions, having a system in place, having the right people in place, and just making sure things are better aligned, you able now to go out into the world and be more efficient. Now, vitality, success, and happiness. Back to this. We use the same formula. It's the exact same formula to get happiness, success, vitality. To adapt to your environment and to have the right amount of input, required input. Let me give you an example. Back to the chart we talked about, there's 2% of high achievers, but only 0.02% of happy high achievers. If you look at that, it seems like the happy high achievers do the same things as the high achievers. They look the same, but there's definitely something they're focused on. There's a discipline, there's their goals and visions, there's something underneath the water that makes their iceberg more massive than just being a high performer, right? And all that stuff, you read about it in books, but the happiness factor, the how do you differentiate yourself away from those who are just performing well, right? What are the activities that they're doing to make themselves happy? What are the things that are making them more vitalized and energetic and excited about what they do and adds value to their life? They're experiencing something more, and it's coming from the relationships that they're having. It's coming from the activities they're doing. They're putting things in a different perspective that makes them adapt differently to their environment, and it's creating lower levels of entropy and disorder, and they're getting more of their desired output, right? Their desired output. So that sounds strange when you first hear it, but if you think about it, it really does make a lot of sense. So imagine you have an employee and they're in your company and they are an outstanding performer and they show up every day on time every day, right? And they just think to themselves, you know what, I absolutely love my job, I love the place that I work, I can't believe they actually paid me to do what I'm doing, right? They're happy, they're vitalized, and they're successful. Now, notice something. Notice the employee, they feel that they're getting more than what they're actually putting in. Now, mind you, the happy, achieving employee is doing the same amount of work as the high performer. The only difference is that they're happy. So even though they're putting in the energy and the work, they don't feel like they are, right? It becomes ease to them and they're enjoying their work, right? And as a manager and a leader, you think, oh my gosh, if I can just find 100 more of these, we'd be set, right? We who can show up every day on time. They have joy in the work that they do. They produce at a high level, and they are getting so much more out of the relationship than they feel they're putting in. And they don't cause any problems, right? Their level of disorder is low, and they have adapted to our culture, right? This is the same that's happened between the high achievers and the happy high achievers, right? There's something going on. Same thing happens with marriages. In a really successful marriage, you may see partners who feel they're getting more out of the relationship than they put in, right? They've adapted and their entropy and their disorder is low. And this is the same thing with performance, success, vitality, and happiness, right? Success and performance are both functions of desired output, or they're both functions of adaptation over required input. Let me say it again. Performance and success, vitality and happiness, they're all functions of desired output over required input. Now that you can apply this into your life, you can begin to see how you can bring more happiness and vitality and performance into your organization. And before we go, let's go over another topic of importance, and it's how do you troubleshoot. And we do that by what I love to do is called desired output scans. Okay. So desired undesired output scans is about completing a mindset check and a mechanics check. You're checking to ensure that the energy is flowing in the right direction. You're looking for waste, and you're making sure you're getting the expected outcomes you are looking for. Now, the energy that you have is going to flow from the environment to the inside and then out. That's the flow of energy in your system. In order to have high performance and vitality and happiness, you want to minimize undesired outputs, entropy, chaos, disorder, right? And you want to maximize your desired outputs, high performance, right? Growth mindset, good strategy, strong teams. So let's do a scan. Let's start with your health. So you look at your health and you're not energized. You're thinking to yourself, okay, I'm hearing my thoughts. These are the problems I'm having mentally, right? It's costing me time and energy. Do a mechanics check. If it feels like it's costing you energy, then it's a sign of disorder. It's a leaky vessel somewhere in your system, and you want to plug the leak, right? So you do the work to mechanically plug the leak. You may ask yourself, okay, well, my health is costing me energy. I'm drained. I need to work on my health. Mechanically, you say, okay, well, now how can I restore my health? How can I change and do what's needed to get a routine, an exercise routine, change my diet, my activities, and become more of an added value to my life? Let's do a scan. Let's say you scan your relationships, your marriage, right? And you do a mindset check. You ask yourself a question, okay, is costing me or is it adding energy to my life? Is it adding value to my life? And then your mind a mechanic check. And if your relationships are costing you more energy, then you want to focus on improving that. Like how can you shift it and repair it so that it's adding more value to you and your relationship. Now, if both parties feel that they are getting more out of the relationship, they're putting in, then it's an added value. And the probability of a high performing marriage or relationship, it increases on both sides. Let's say you are looking at your work relationships and you ask yourself mentally, how are these relationships in your team costing you energy? If you feel like you're getting less out of it than you're putting in, then it's stealing from your performance level. It's stealing from your happiness and your vitality. It's draining you, right? So you have to ask yourself and you have to think about mechanically, how do you shift the relationship so that it's adding more value to you and to the team? How do you bring in the right people and put them in the right roles? Do you have the right vision? Do you have the right values? Are you on the right strategies? Right? Do you have a clear structure? Are you making the right decisions? Right? So those are the mechanical things you do to scan your outputs, your undesired outputs. And the last example is that you do the same thing with your clients. You look at your client base and you see which of your clients cost you more than you are getting return. If you want a higher performance out of your clients, more sales, more vitality, you want to eliminate any undesirable outputs, you have to begin to shift those clients and teach them and train them that this is the value and the culture you are building in totality, and the seek and making sure that they align with the vision, the goal is the secret to improving performance and bringing more joy and vitality into your life. So let's recap. We talked about the one thing that is driving everything, which is your mechanical performance formula. It's for happiness and performance. We discussed the bell curve and where the happy high achievers exist on the curve. We went over the laws of thermodynamics, which is about conserving energy and putting energy into order. And we also given you some examples of how it may look in your life, how performance works, and how to troubleshoot performance in your life by scanning areas of your life. That was performance. And I'm excited to go to the next module to actually talk about management.